Dear Lumpo, how does a stream entry practice the path of fruit? Sadhu.
Well, the question not absolutely clear, but the stream enterer has attained certain things. Their mind has changed in certain ways. The way the Buddha talked about the progress towards enlightenment, talked about 10 fetters that bind the mind to the world and to rebirth and to suffering. And obviously you can Google this, read this up on this, but the Sotapanna has abandoned the first 3 fetters. Skeptical doubt about the path of practice, what it is, what it isn't. They know because they practice to the point where they're confident in what they've learned and practiced and experienced. They have no more doubts about the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, the teachings and the way of training, the way of practice. They have no more blind attachment to rites and rituals. They understand how to practice with right view for liberation from attachment, rather than just clinging to practices as just with the sort of hope that they'll bring some kind of liberation or peace of mind. So they have clarity in the way they practice and the way they use different meditation techniques and precepts and so on. And then the important one, Sakkaya Ditthi, they've abandoned self-view. The idea that this body and mind is a permanent, unchanging self. They've abandoned that. They've seen through that by having penetrating insight into impermanence. So then they live according to these things that they've abandoned. So, Sotapanna no longer makes bad karma in the sense they don't break precepts, deliberately break precepts or have the intention to kill, steal, commit acts of sexual misconduct, lie, get intoxicated with drink and drugs. They understand the value of those precepts and they just quite naturally keep them. They've abandoned the intentions to break them. The Sotapanna is generous. They've abandoned a lot of their stinginess. They have this unshakable confidence in the Buddha and the path of practice, the Dhamma. So they know how to practice in each situation. Their mindfulness is well developed. Their insight is well developed. It's not perfect yet. Only an arahant you'd say, was perfectly insightful. But the Sotapanna has had a glimpse of Nibbana, so they have no more doubts or uncertainty. So they know what they have to do to practice with whatever situation arises for them. They use it as a way of practicing the Dhamma rather than getting lost and going backwards. The Sotapanna doesn't fall backwards and be born into lower realms anymore because they don't make the negative karma for that. So there's various things that the Sotapanna has learned, practiced, realized, and the way they think and look at the world has changed quite drastically. And it's something we should all aspire to if we're following the Buddha's path. Don't be half-hearted and just say, I just want to be a good person, or I just want to follow the Buddha, but in a half-hearted way. You really aim to attain Sotapanna this life. Why not?
Sadhu Lumpo, there's a follow-up question. Heard in talks that a Sotapanna experience fruition at the moment of death. Can Lumpo please explain?
Well, before they die, they're already experiencing fruition. But the important thing is at the moment of death, your mind, you let go of the body, doesn't it? Mind and body, or nama, rupa, separate. That's what death is, the death of the physical body. But the mind doesn't die for a Sotapanna because they go on to another maximum, 6 more lives, or maybe just 3 or 3 more lives. Depends on the strength of their practice, the strength of their spiritual faculties. But at the moment of death, all their barami gathers together So whatever samadhi they've developed, their mind will probably enter samadhi, and the insights they've developed through their life are maintained at death because they go with them into their next life. Where they're reborn depends, but most likely if they're human, they're going to be reborn in a heaven realm for a little while and then maybe come back as a human quite quickly. Next question.
Are you able to speak, Kwan Liman?
Yes, yes. Dear Longpo, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Hello.
Hello. Dear Longpo, I was the one who asked about the path of fruit. There's Maga and Pala. So Pala is the path of fruit. Is it a separate path or can we link it? Like first we have to practice the path and then the fruition will come.
Correct. So fruit means the result of your practice. And it's a significant change in the mind. The Sotapanna who has attained the fruit of Sotapanna, that person, their mind has changed from the mind who is still practicing to become a Sotapanna on the path. There's some significant differences, and there's a certain, because they've had a glimpse of Nibbana, there's a certain change in the way they look at the world, the way they look at themselves and the way they look at the world around them. And this insight that they've had, the fruit of Sodapati or stream entry, stays with them. It doesn't disappear now. Like somebody who's practicing Magga to become a Sotapanna, before they're Sotapanna, maybe, they still stray from the path, or they lose their way for a while, or get lazy, or fall back, maybe make a mistake or get deluded. It's still possible. But once they've attained the fruit of stream entry, there's no falling back. There's no getting lost or straying from the path. How quickly they attain Nibbana after that varies depending on various spiritual qualities, parami, that they've developed. But they will definitely attain Nibbana because the mind has evolved to a point where it sees things as Dhamma. So in particular, there's a sense of separation between mind and body. The mind has a certain peace that never disappears, a certain clarity, brightness, peace that's always there from Sotapanna right up to Nibbana. Whereas until one's reached that point, it's never quite sure. The mind may have a lot of peace, of course, but it's never guaranteed. One's precepts may fall away, one's practice of mindfulness and meditation may be patchy and fall away. One, possibly could even give up Buddhism altogether and follow some other religion, or just give up religion altogether. It's possible until one's attained Sotapanna. So it's a kind of important turning point. That's why people talk about it so much, because it's just the gathering together, the coalescence of all these good qualities of the Noble Eightfold Path are all arising in the mind together at the same time. And the mind actually has deep insight that changes the way that person would think and the way they relate to the world.
Thank you, Longpo. Longpo, may I ask, does a Sotapanna need to attain fourth jhana or lower? And do they need to observe 8 precepts?
They don't absolutely need to observe 8 precepts, but it's a very good thing to practice with because it will help your meditation. If you wish to attain jhana, very good way to attain jhana is keeping 8 precepts as a lay person, either for periods of time or even permanently. Just go on to 8 precepts when you're ready. any deep states of samadhi, these jhanas we're talking about, the 8 precepts is probably the best form to support the deepening of the practice of meditation, samadhi, attaining jhana. It's not that it's impossible with 5 precepts, but 5 precepts, you're still surrounded by a lot of sensuality, very easy to get distracted, very difficult to develop and maintain deep states of samadhi. Not impossible, but difficult. So the 8 precepts are very supportive of training the mind to the point of jhana. What level of jhana one attains in meditation, most people are not skilled in the sense they can say, well, I'm going to enter first jhana, second jhana, third jhana, at will like that. That's somebody who's very advanced, very well developed. Their bharami is very well developed. And they're quite rare, those people. Doesn't mean to say one might never attain 4th jhana or any of the jhanas, but to have skill entering and leaving jhana is a very rare skill in the world. So perhaps you don't need to focus so much on the depths or the level of jhana, maybe more focus on the 5 hindrances to samadhi, learning how to abandon them every time you meditate, making sure those hindrances don't get in the way of your practice or bother you. Learn how to abandon those hindrances over and over again, and then your samadhi will deepen, and then from there your insight will also deepen. I'd particularly work on the 5 hindrances on a daily basis.
Thank you very much, Luangpo. Thank you so much, Sadhu.
Very happy to hear your question today.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Sadhu Lumpo, next question. Dear Lumpo, when one doesn't feel like one wants to give up something, but does so anyway, does that reduce the good karma compared to another person who gives up the same thing wholeheartedly?
Yeah, that's correct. Your intention can vary, or different people, their intention can vary in strength and how wholesome or unwholesome it is. So say talking about giving up something. So sometimes you can give away, so in terms of dana, giving away material things, you can do it sometimes, you do it, but you do it kind of grudgingly. Maybe somebody else makes you or pushes you into it, so you should do this, and it's not really coming from you, it's more from social pressure perhaps. But it's still a valid way. Sometimes in our training we need to have teachers or Kalyana Mitta who encourage us in good ways. So at first we're not fully committed to meditating or giving away dana or helping someone, but the teacher or the Kalyana Mitta says, do this, it's good for you. And then over time maybe you start to see the value of it, so your intention strengthens and it's no longer done in a grudging way or a half-hearted way, and then maybe one changes and one really wants to do it. And also it depends on your kilesas, your attachments and the cravings that come up. So sometimes you understand the value of offering dana or the value of keeping precepts or meditating, but then you're having a bad day. You're having a bad day and you're full of anger, or you're full of worry, or you're full of some kind of negative emotion. So even though you know these things are good, there's resistance, stubbornness. So you just say, I don't want to do it, I'm lazy, or I can't be bothered. The other emotion has come in and maybe obstructs you from doing something good. So these are experiences you get to know as you train your mind. You'll see your intention goes up and down a little bit. Sometimes there's obstacles, new situations arise and your intention will change. So you're learning from that. As you become more mindful and you practice more regularly, you learn how to deal with those changes. But the idea is hopefully you get to the point where you don't need other people to compel you or force you or encourage you to do good things like meditate, offer dana, keep precepts, you get to the point where you just naturally see it's valuable and it just becomes part of who you are, part of your character. But in the beginning, sometimes we need others to push us a bit, or we have this experience of, you have strong faith and you do a lot and then you give up and you lose your way and then you come back and do some more. In the beginning of practice, sometimes it's a bit patchy, our faith or our commitment, and that will affect our intention. Your intention can change very quickly. But the idea is to get to the point where it's established. Your right intention or good intention, wholesome intention is established all the time.
Sadhu Lumpo, next question. Dear Lumpo, what is meant by rites and rituals?
Well, it can mean precepts, meditation techniques, religious practices that people take on. But when we talk about attachment to rites and rituals, we're talking about the view behind the practice, the way you view it, the way you believe or look at it. So sometimes people have what we call wrong view, and they say, I do this practice, I'm going to get enlightened for sure, but they're not really developing true insight or understanding from it, they're just doing it. And they may do it in a very disciplined, a very strict way, but they're not seeing defilements, say, of greed, anger, delusion, or attachment to views, self-view, conceit, because they're not investigating the Dhamma as they practice these rites and rituals, precepts, and so on. So even the Buddha, before he was Buddha, when he was practicing what we call the dukkha giriya, the ascetic practices that were very common amongst spiritual seekers in India in those days, he realized this is a form of attachment. He was, fasting, holding his breath, not going to the toilet, not sleeping. He was really pushing himself physically very hard, and he was very disciplined and very committed to those practices. But he saw that there was an element that was just blind attachment. He didn't really understand how to use them to develop insight. And later he realized that. So, sometimes people have their ways, their practices, their rituals that they really attach to and become they strongly identify with them, but they're not yet gaining insight. It's not taking them beyond the attachment to what you might call conventional reality. And so it can become limiting. You attach too much to something, it could be just a technique of meditation. I always do my anapanasati like this, and they just do it in a very habitual way without really going on to reflect and develop insight. Or precepts, you could attach to your precepts. I keep the 5 precepts very purely. I'm good to develop a sense of self around the precepts and don't see that because they're not going on to develop insight. So then they have this new self-identity. I'm now somebody who keeps the 5 precepts. Anyone else, and where it comes out is maybe look at someone else as they don't keep the 5 precepts, or they don't keep them as well as I do. So it develops maybe aversion or arrogance, conceit maybe. So all the practices we do can be for liberation, but they can also become an attachment in themselves if we don't investigate. So we have to keep reflecting on this, become more mindful and investigate our attitudes, our views that lie behind the different practices we do.
Sadhu Lumpo, next question. Dear Ajahn, which suffering does a Sotapanna still have? Do they still suffer, for example, from acute and long pain in the body and sleepless nights because of the pain? Do they still suffer from mental reactions to Vedanas? Can you please give further example? Thank you.
Well, obviously every Sotapanna will still have a physical body until they die, and if you have a human body, you're bound to have some pain. Some have a lot of pain, some have less pain, depending on karma, past karma. So they will have to experience some pain, of course. Illness, aging, some maybe even have accidents, some even are killed, who knows. Everyone's karma is a bit different. The important thing is how the mind of the Sotapanna deals or relates to physical pain. So it won't be a cause for the Sotapanna to break the precepts. So good example I often quote is one monk I knew who was considered to be a Sotapanna with very good sila, good samadhi, good insight, and he's walking back from alms round. This is a true story in Thailand, and as he's walking into the monastery with a line of monks, a deer, a male deer that was in season, so it was its hormones were up and it was very aggressive, was running around the monastery. This happens sometimes in forest monasteries. They're in a limited space. And the deer saw the monks coming, it charged the monks, and he was the senior monk, so he was the first monk walking in the line. The deer ran at him, knocked him over, and started to gorge, is that the right word? Stab or gorge his stomach, opened up his stomach with the horns of the deer, pulled out a bit of his intestines. There was blood everywhere, and it must have been incredibly painful. But this monk maintained his composure. He's lying on the ground. The deer is butting him and hurting him very greatly. The monks are trying to pull the deer off, and then a lot of villagers came by, and the villagers, they have their machetes because they're farmers. They all came with their machetes to kill the deer. They're so angry that the deer had attacked the monk. And the monk is on the ground holding his stomach with blood, and it must have been incredible pain. He lay there and he said, "No, I forgive the deer. Don't touch the deer. Don't harm the deer. Just push it away. That's enough. You don't need to hurt it, kill it, do anything. I forgive it." That's the mind of a Sotapanna in terms of if somebody physically attacks them, they forgive. They don't go to anger. They may have some attachment to the pain. Their mind may not be perfectly mindful because the pain may be very overwhelming and challenging, but they don't go to break the precepts. They have a abhayadana. They forgive, they let go of the anger that may be stimulated in that situation. So the Sotapanna doesn't break the precepts, but they still have to deal with pain and difficult situations. They may even have some anger, some lust, some desire coming up in the mind, but they practice vipassana quite naturally. So this lust or this anger or this confusion that arises becomes the subject for their vipassana insight straight away, and they quickly let go or go beyond this, and it won't lead them to break the precepts. So this is one of the differences between an enlightened person and an unenlightened person. Unenlightened person maybe gets pain and they scream and moan and get angry and blame everyone and get upset, depending on the situation. The Sotapanna is unlikely to do that. The Sotapanna will probably be much more composed, restrained, even when there's difficulty, provocation, pain, difficulty. They tend to deal with it with Dhamma. And as I said, if it's a Sotapanna, there may be still a little bit of defilement stimulated by painful feeling, painful situations, but they quickly see it as impermanent, as not self, and let go. It doesn't linger. They don't linger they don't form grudges, they don't linger on their pain. They just know pain or it's difficult, but then they let go of whatever reaction comes up. They don't hold on to that reaction because they've learned not to.
Sadhu Lumpo. The next question. I would like to ask Ajahn regarding the 32 parts of body contemplation meditation method. Normally, we would need to contemplate all the 32 parts, but some meditation masters said you can use all 32 parts, 5 parts, or even just 1 part. Example for 5 parts: mentally recite head hair, body hair, nail, teeth, skin, then visualize the location in the body and their foulness. Some meditation master advise to reverse the order, such as skin, teeth, nail, body hair, head hair. But some say don't need to reverse the order, can just start with the head hair again. I was told as long as you can keep your mind in the 5 objects, you can do it whatever order you like. Dear Ajahn, can you give some advice on this?
I believe this question was asked before, whether it was last Tuesday or last Sunday, I'm not sure, but I have answered it before. Well, from your question, you can see that there are different ways to approach the contemplation of the body, and that's something to be aware of. There's not just one way to do it, but you're given a standard method to start with. Sometimes you have to do the standard method, the basic method first, get used to it, and then as you become more skilled and more experienced in it, you refine your practice and maybe focus on something that you find helpful to you or brings peace or samadhi to your mind. So these 32 parts, like you say, when you're ordained as a monk, you take just the first 5 parts, they're given to you. You forward, reverse order, you get used to contemplating them. But over time you might develop all 32 parts where you learn to visualize them, recite them, the word, put your mind on them in your body. And you may find over time one particular part satisfies your mind more than others as a meditation object. You may even find images of a certain body part or aspect of the body coming up quite naturally. So over time, as you become more experienced, often you refine down to just one part of the body. And it could be any of those 32 parts. And it's not like that one is better than the other. You have to get to know your own mind and find what you have an affinity with. And how do you know you have an affinity? Well, when you go to that one body part, you visualize it, you put your attention on it, it tends to hold your attention. It's not so boring, it's not so difficult to stay with that part as a visual image or as a reflection as well. And we reflect on impermanence, on the unattractiveness, on the lack of self or ownership in these parts. There's a whole range of reflections you develop, but you might find one particular part or aspect of the body holds your attention, so you develop that more than the others. But in the beginning, you go through the 32 parts. They say it's like, we all know our mind is really, scattered. We call it the monkey mind. So how do you train monkeys? So you give them a lot of different tasks to do. So it's like a monkey has 32 different trees in the forest. You give the task of exploring each tree, getting to know each tree. Then after a while it says, I know each tree, and then it might pick its favorite tree and just stick with one tree. Monkey mind is a bit like that. You go through all the 32 parts, you're giving it work to do, something to contemplate, go through, absorb some of all this distracted energy that we have. Rather than thinking of many other things, you're just thinking through the 32 parts until the mind settles, and then maybe one part is enough. And your mind will kind of work out which part it's happy to concentrate on.
Sadhu Lumpo, next question. Dear Lumpo, when we die, rebirth happens instantly in some realm, or the mind have to wait in some plane of existence? Thank you so much.
Well, I think the main thing is when you die, the body is not working anymore, so mind and body separate. I think everyone can agree the body stops working. That's what death is. So where is the mind gone? Well, it's got to be somewhere, hasn't it? And the Buddhist explanation is, well, it's in one plane or one realm. It could be, it's a ghost just hanging around very close. It may go straight to a heaven realm, or may go straight to a hell realm, ghost realm. But generally you don't go straight to a human rebirth. That may take a little bit of time. So it will tend to be in one of these more invisible realms. It's just you can't see, you can't prove, so there's so much skepticism and doubt about the whole thing, and that's reasonable. So I would just keep on contemplating, but maybe contemplate from your own experience in this life, what you can see, how your mind darts around and moves between planes within your own experience. So you're the mind of the Deva. What's that like in your own experience? The mind that is bright, wholesome, has a sense of shame, the qualities of a Deva, maybe contemplate that. Or when the mind is very caught into unwholesome mental states, very angry, very greedy, very not caring about other people, cruel, not compassionate, what's that mind like? Start to notice these tendencies, and this will give you some idea of where the mind might be heading to after we die. But of course, it's instant in the sense of mind and body separate. But exactly where it goes or what happens next will depend on karma, the strength of good and bad karma that you've made. But we believe that one thing you can do to help the dead is to make merit for them. So at a funeral is a great merit-making time. Meditate, chant for them, make offerings for them. And that may be a cause for that person, their citta, their vijnana is close by. They may gain a good rebirth, happy, rejoicing in the merit you're making on their behalf. The Buddha and various teachers right up to the present day seem to confirm this. So that's at least something to consider for yourself. Making merit for others can be helpful for them, or just making your own good karma. The best, of course, is not thinking, oh, when I die, I hope someone makes merit for me. That's a bit of a lazy attitude. I would recommend making your own merit this life, making the good karma so that when you die, you don't have to wait around for someone else to make merit for you. Your merit is there. You've already made the good karma, and your destination, good destination, is already assured. Or best of all would be nibbana. So attain sotapanna, at least this life would be a good outcome, I think.
Sadhu Lumpo, the next question is Vipassana a meditation? In the Sutta Nikaya, it was never mentioned. Today, however, in an event I met with a nun, she shared with me that she is able to reach a very peaceful place. She didn't mention which or what place she is at, but rather sounds like a very tranquil and serene. By practicing Vipassana, can Vipassana supersede all the jhana level?
Well, it depends how you interpret vipassana, but generally speaking, it's the development of wisdom, panya, and knowledge, clear knowledge and vision of the way things are, and particularly seeing the three characteristics of impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and not self, which the Buddha talked about. He may or may not have used the word vipassana, but he certainly talked a lot about impermanence and not self, and dukkha, the three characteristics. So the important thing to see is how on earth can you get to realize or know or see these three characteristics? Well, you need to pay attention to your physical and mental experience. How do you pay attention? Well, you need to be mindful. So the practice of samatha, developing mindfulness through what we call samatha objects, such as the breath or recollection of the Buddha and so on, are to strengthen mindfulness in the first instance. to support the vipassana or the insight meditation. So they go hand in hand. So some people will spend more time developing samatha to maybe a more refined level. Others are more inclined to develop insight, wisdom, reflect on things. And some people reflect very quickly after they practice meditation. They depend on just a little bit of samadhi and then reflect. Others develop deeper states of samadhi and then reflect on the three characteristics. There's room for variation here, I think, and that seems to be backed up in the suttas. So the important thing is you have to be mindful. Your mind has to be not caught up in the five hindrances in order to see anicca, dukkha, anatta, to practice vipassana. That's the important thing. If somebody, you say a nun has attained a state of peace, well, good, keep going. That sounds very good, doesn't it? We gain peace both from the practice of samatha, experiencing the factors of samadhi, and we gain peace from insight, contemplating, reflecting on the three characteristics, uprooting defilements of greed, anger, and delusion. Because why do you stop being greedy? It's because you see the object of your greed is impermanent, unsatisfactory, and not self. So then you stop longing for it. Why do you stop being angry? Because you see the object of your anger is impermanent, not self. So you stop getting angry. So this is what vipassana is, ultimately what uproots defilements from the mind. But often it's supported by samatha. We talk about the Noble Eightfold Path, sila, samadhi, panya. They all work together. For anyone who's attaining some peace in their meditation, good for them. We're happy for you. Keep up the good practice.
Sadhu Lumpo, next question. Dear Lumpo, if someone does something bad to us and we think that karma will catch up with us, we still think incorrectly, right?
If someone else is doing something bad to you, and it's uncalled for, out of the blue, you didn't do anything to provoke it, well, that probably is karma from the past. Whether you can remember the sort of events leading up to this person doing something bad to you, or it's so far back that you can't remember anymore, but there's likely to be causes and conditions that have led up to this. So a lot of life we have to be just very patient with other people, don't we? At work, in the family. Some of them behave well, some not so well, some try to hurt us, some don't. Because we've lived in the world for so many years and there's so many people around, and we possibly have lived for many, many lifetimes as well, we've made a big store of karma which keeps coming back to us. Some is good, some is not good. So we have to be very patient with it all, and be very enduring with this karma as it comes up, and try not to make things worse than they are. So if somebody is behaving badly to you, sure, you can do something about it. You do what you can to fix the problem, protect yourself, whatever. But try not to make more bad karma yourself, because that will probably prolong the whole problem, and whatever bad karma you're making will come back on you, won't it? So if you understand more about cause and effect and karma, then that means even when you're facing the difficult situation of someone else doing something bad towards you, you don't really want to continue the whole cycle. So you try to meet it with skillful qualities such as patience, mindfulness, and use wisdom and understanding to solve the problem, rather than make it worse by fighting them or causing some kind of damage to them so that they come back on you and it just keeps going on forever. You don't want that. So try to be as patient and solve it in a peaceful way, and be as patient as you can.
Sadhu Lumpo, next question. Dear Ajahn, in Vipassana practice, how do we see non-self in anger or any other hindrance? Thank you.
Well, anger is a very the word absorbing emotion, isn't it? When you're angry, you absorb into your anger, so it's hard to see it for what it is. We get lost in it. But the more mindfulness you practice and the more you keep the precepts, it starts to show or highlight your anger to you. You're seeing it as a mental state, an emotion, negative emotion, a feeling, a train of thought that comes up, triggered by various things. But then you start to see it as an impermanent mental state. And someone was saying today, they meditate every day in their practice and now they realize, they've been angry many times in their life, but it never lasts. And sometimes you just have that realization, anger doesn't last. If it doesn't last, it's not really part of who you are, is it? It's a visitor to the mind, or it's a temporary experience that comes up, it's there for a while and it goes. It may come up often and you may have a particular attachment that's bringing you a lot of anger regularly, but it's always impermanent. That's its nature. It's not fixed, it's not lasting, it's not always there. So you have to start noticing that. That's what you're doing in Vipassana, isn't it? You're seeing anger as an impermanent, unsatisfactory, ownerless state of mind. When we say ownerless, meaning it doesn't just exist by itself. It's not something you own and it doesn't just exist. It's triggered by causes and conditions. And if you understand that more, well, you can start rectifying the whole process so you don't get triggered so much. Anger won't arise so much once you're more mindful and understand it. And also, and even if it does slip through your kind of guard, mindful guard of your mind, and you start to become angry again. You know it's impermanent. The more you reflect on this, you know this is impermanent, this will pass. So you allow it to pass even quicker because you're more mindful and insightful now. Seeing impermanence will help you to see it as ownerless. It's whatever is impermanent cannot be a self because it's impermanent. You could say it's an impermanent self, so true, there's still an experience there that you say, this is my anger. But what we're saying is you're undermining that part of the mind that likes to grasp it and identify with it. Now you're seeing it more as just a mental state that flows through your consciousness. And, it arises, it passes away, and that helps you to let go of it quicker, helps the anger to be less powerful, less intense. So ultimately you may be able to see, this is something I can completely give up. One day it's possible. And we know other people have done that. The Buddha, all the arahants have given up anger completely. So that's something to remember, isn't it? Human beings can abandon anger. It doesn't always have to be with us. That gives you kind of inspiration, hopefully, to practice, keep practicing.
Sadhu Lumpo, next question. Dear Lumpo, when there are mice in places like the ceiling and we can't remove them carefully, we have to rely on rodent control which might harm them. How can I find peace with this situation? Will it ultimately lead to breaking my precept? Sadhu.
Well, it doesn't have to lead to you breaking the precepts. You could come and stay in our monastery and take a training course in how to deal with mice in your ceiling, because the monks regularly have to deal with mice in the ceiling. Even Venerable Dhammavittiko is reading this question out, has had to deal with mice in his ceiling, I believe. I have as well. The way we deal with it here is we seal the ceiling. We work out where they're getting, and then we seal up all the holes, because our kutis where we live are quite small, so you can do that. I realize you can't always do that with a big house. Maybe there's a lesson there. Maybe you shouldn't have such a big house. But having said that, you've got your house, you've got to deal with it. But the other thing we tend to do or use is traps that don't kill. You can buy them very easily, get someone to buy for you or mail order or whatever. You get the trap with the door and you find what the best bait is, bit of tuna, they love tuna, peanut butter, You have to think mouse for a little while. What are mice like? Oh, they're like peanut butter. Okay, get that into the trap. Works every time. Mouse goes in, door shuts, you got your little mouse there. Then you have to get it 5 kilometers away from your house to be safe. If you just take it over, across the road or something, they'll be back before nightfall. So go 5 kilometers, preferably over a river or something, further away with water in between you and them. Drop off the mice, wish them well, practice metta, and just say, look, I hope you're well and happy, but don't come back. So you can trap them without killing them. You can seal up the holes where they get in. You just have to be kind of diligent and work at it a bit. Don't just take the easy route and kill them, because then you make a lot of bad karma, and they'll probably come back and haunt you as well as bother you. So that's not good. So sometimes it takes effort, doesn't it, to keep precepts but solve a problem. And we have to get out of our kind of apathetic, comfortable attachment sometimes and do something. So that's my recommendation.
Sadhu Lumpo, is there any final question before we end tonight's session?
Okay, sounds like enough for tonight. So very nice to be with you all and talk to you. And we wish you well with your Dhamma practice and your meditation. And see you again next time. Between now and then, may the blessings of Buddha Dhamma Sangha guide you and protect you.